Ethan Cole thought the cameras in his apartment were for safety, installed by the woman who said she loved him. By the time he realized those eyes never blinked, it was too late. The last thing they captured was his final breath. If you want more true crime stories where the perfect picture cracks and the truth bleeds through, subscribe now and join the channel. But let's go back to where it all began. Ethan Cole was 27, a graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon. He wasn't the kind of man who drew attention when he walked into a room. Average height, slightly shy smile, always carrying a sketchbook under his arm. People who knew him said he was soft around the edges, the kind of guy who apologized if you bumped into him. He met Ava Monroe at a friend's birthday party. Ava was the opposite of Ethan, fiery, loud, the center of attention. Where Ethan lingered in the background, Ava on the stage. She leaned across the table, asked him about the sketches in his book, and laughed in a way that made everyone else turn. By the end of the night, she had his number. At first, Ethan's friends teased him. "She's out of your league, man." But Ava was relentless in her affection. She brought him coffee at work, surprised him with handwritten notes, even learned the names of his coworkers. Ethan described it as intoxicating, someone so powerful choosing him. Within weeks, Ava was staying over at his apartment. She stocked his fridge with her favorite foods, moved her makeup into his bathroom cabinet, and insisted they share locations on their phones. Ethan thought it was just modern dating. "Everyone shares locations these days," she said. The first camera appeared after Ethan's bike was stolen. Ava suggested security. "You live on the ground floor, babe. People can just look inside." She ordered a sleek black camera online, installed it herself, and showed him the app on her phone. "See? Now we're safe." But safety quickly turned into surveillance. "Why did you get home at 8:17 instead of 8 o'clock? You didn't answer my call at lunch. Who were you talking to? You left your sketchbook open. Who's that woman you drew?" Ethan laughed it off at first. Ava was intense, sure, but also passionate. She loved him so much it hurt. That's how he explained it to his friends, though they noticed his smile shrinking. By month 4, there were 3 cameras: living room, kitchen, and bedroom. Ava had the feeds on her phone. Sometimes, while Ethan was cooking, she'd text him, "Don't burn the pasta, babe." He would glance at the camera in the corner and feel his chest tighten. One night, he woke up to the glow of the red recording light. Ava was sitting in bed beside him, watching the feed on her phone. When he asked what she was doing, she simply said, "I just like knowing you're really mine." It was the kind of sentence that sounds romantic until you hear the tone. Flat, cold, more possession than love. Ethan began confiding in his sister, Leah. He told her Ava was a little much, but he couldn't imagine breaking up with her. She'd lose it, he whispered. Leah told him to be careful. Then came the night of the fight. Neighbors later reported hearing raised voices around 2 a.m. Ethan's voice was pleading, Ava's sharp and cutting. The camera in the bedroom caught the argument, though police would describe the footage as incomplete. The last clear image was Ethan standing near the bed, hands raised, saying, "Ava, please. This isn't love." And then static. The file ends abruptly. When police arrived the next morning, called by Leah after Ethan missed their weekly check-in, they found Ava sitting calmly on the couch. Ethan was in the bedroom, unresponsive, with bruises around his neck. Ava's first words to the officers were chilling. "Check the cameras. He'll explain everything." But the recordings Ava handed over weren't complete. Segments were missing. Whole hours erased. The autopsy revealed strangulation as the cause of death. Ethan Cole hadn't fought back, at least, not in a way that left defensive wounds. His hands were unmarked, no scratches on Ava, no broken nails. To investigators, that was odd. Strangulation is an intimate, violent act. Victims almost always claw, hit, fight for air. Ethan's stillness told another story. He had either been restrained or too shocked to resist. Detective Karen Ellison, leading the case, zeroed in on the cameras. They were supposed to be the perfect witnesses, unblinking, impartial. But as she scrolled through the files Ava provided, she noticed gaps. At exactly 2:14 a.m., during the peak of the argument, the footage skipped 27 minutes. It resumed at 2:41 a.m., with Ava alone, smoothing the bed sheets. When questioned, Ava's answers were rehearsed. "Ethan attacked me. I defended myself. The cameras show everything." But Detective Ellison pointed out the missing footage. Ava shrugged. Maybe the Wi-Fi cut out. Leah, Ethan's sister, refused to believe it. He was gentle. He wouldn't lay a hand on her. If anything, he'd let her scream until she got tired. Her voice cracked in the interview, but her certainty never wavered. Prosecutors dug into Ava's past. What they found painted a chilling portrait. Former boyfriends described her as intense, clingy, even terrifying. One man filed a restraining order after Ava allegedly followed him to work, slashed his car tires, and left notes on his windshield that read, "If I can't have you, no one will." But none of those incidents had escalated to murder until Ethan. Court records later revealed Ava's digital footprint. She had searched terms like, how long does it take to strangle someone, how to delete security footage permanently, and, disturbingly, signs he is about to leave you. The prosecution argued these weren't the searches of a woman defending herself. They were the preparations of someone planning to kill. During trial, the most haunting evidence came from an unexpected source, Ava's own voice. On one of the surviving clips, just minutes before the footage cut, she was heard saying, "I don't need the world to see us. I just need to see you. Every second, every breath." The courtroom fell silent as the words played on loop. The defense attempted to frame Ethan as emotionally neglectful, claiming Ava's actions were born of desperation, not malice. But the jury saw through it. A woman who installs cameras in every corner, who deletes footage at the exact moment of death, who watches her partner like prey. This wasn't love. It was control taken to its fatal end. After 2 weeks of testimony, the verdict came swift and unanimous. Guilty of second-degree murder. Ava Monroe was sentenced to 35 years in prison without parole. Yet even behind bars, she never expressed remorse. In a chilling interview after the trial, Ava stared into the camera lens, a faint smile tugging at her lips, and said, "He thought he could leave. But love doesn't end just because someone stops breathing. Grief rearranges rooms." After the verdict, Leah stood in Ethan's apartment and felt every object tilt toward absence. The plant he forgot to water, the mug with a chipped handle, the unblinking black lenses in the corners like flies that never died. She had come with Detective Ellison to collect Ethan's personal items, and she couldn't stop glancing at the bedroom camera. It looked back with machine patience. "Leave it," Ellison said softly. "It's evidence, even if the trial is over." Leah nodded and opened Ethan's sketchbook, as if memory would smell like paper. Between studies of streetlights and hands, a page was ripped out, torn cleanly, like someone had decided a single drawing didn't belong with the others. Leah remembered Ethan's last text. "If anything ever feels wrong, check the thermostat." She had thought it was one of his quirky jokes. Now it sounded like a breadcrumb kicked under the sofa. "Detective," Leah said, pointing. "He wrote something on the back cover. In faint pencil. Not all eyes blink. Look for reflections." Ellison's brows lifted. Reflections. Back at the lab, they mirrored the room digitally, mapping surfaces that might passively record what active cameras missed. The TV, a framed print with glass, the stainless steel kettle on the dresser. Ava had pulled power during the fatal window. No footage, but physics still kept its own diary. On the bedroom TV, black-screened at 2:20 a.m., a faint ghost moved. A figure crossing the room, elongated by angle. The resolution was bad. More suggestion than person, but the silhouette's posture, the shoulders squared, the arm lifting, formed a question shaped like a hand. They enhanced carefully, frame by frame. No magic, just patience. The outline wasn't Ethan's. He was shorter, softer. In the reflection, the figure's hair swung to one side in a sharp line. Ava had a haircut. Ellison didn't rush to celebrate. She called the manufacturer for system logs. The call center put her on hold long enough for grief to scab over. When the engineer finally came on, he explained what their servers stored. Ping responses, authentication events, timestamps. At 2:13 and 54 seconds a.m., the bedroom camera received a remote command, privacy shutter on. At 2:41 and 22 seconds a.m., privacy shutter off. The command came from the primary user's phone, Ava's. When confronted with the logs, Ava laughed in the prison interview room. "He begged me to stop filming when we argued," she said. "I respected him. That's called consent, detective." Ellison stared at the glass, seeing her own reflection layered over Ava's smile. Consent ends when the person is dead, she said quietly. Leah struggled with a different truth. Memory fights fair. Grief doesn't. She played Ethan's voice messages late at night, pausing on the parts where he inhaled. It was the in-breath she missed, the expectancy. In one message, 3 weeks before he died, Ethan sounded small. I think she loves me in a way that doesn't leave room for me. Leah saved it twice. Ellison, meanwhile, mapped Ava's control like a blueprint. Phone trackers, shared calendars, auto-arming alarms at 9 p.m. that sent Ethan a text, time to come home. Neighbors confirmed the routine. Ava arrived before Ethan, checked windows, straightened frames, spoke to the cameras under her breath like pets. Good eyes, she'd say, tapping the lens. A downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Chong, finally found courage after the trial to admit she'd heard a metronome sound that night. Slow, regular ticking between shouts. She thought it was a clock. Ellison checked photos from the scene. There was no clock. But the kettle on the dresser had a heat retention plate with a subtle click every few seconds. In the TV reflection, the kettle's indicator blinked. It placed Ava on the left side of the room, near the dresser, not where she claimed to be defending herself by the door. Ellison revisited Ava's digital searches. One query stuck like a thorn. Can you erase footage but keep motion alerts? The system log showed motion alerts firing during the gap. Silent pings to the cloud, but no videos saved. The cloud kept the timestamps, even when clips were deleted locally. The pings wrote a pulse: 2:16, 2:18, 2:23, 2:27. A heartbeat against the dark. What happened inside those minutes did not require gore to be horrifying. Control like ceremony. They imagined Ava turning off the recording, placing the phone face down, and stepping into a space where only her rules applied. Ethan, pleading. Ava, calm as a dial tone. The cameras didn't watch. The room did. Leah received a letter from Ava a month later, the handwriting rounded, almost girlish. Leah, you want to make me into a monster. Monsters are easy. Ethan wanted easy, too. He wanted to draw his life in pencil and smudge out the parts he didn't like. I gave him ink. You're welcome. Ava. Leah brought the letter to Ellison, trembling. She still wants the last word. She can write as many as she likes, Ellison said. We're going to give Ethan the last image. The lab produced a still. The TV's dark mirror showing two figures at the edge of legibility. Ava's arm rising, Ethan's head turning away. They didn't release it publicly. Spectacle wasn't justice. But they entered it into the record, a quiet correction. The killing wasn't chaotic. It was curated. In a final property check, Leah returned alone to the apartment. She stood before the bedroom camera that had failed him and unscrewed it gently, the way you'd remove a thorn from skin. On the backplate, a sticker. Ava must have put it there. Read, you're safe. Leah peeled it off, folded it twice, and slid it into Ethan's sketchbook between two drawings of hands. One open, one closed. She paused at the thermostat and thought of his text. The display showed 72 degrees Fahrenheit, steady. She pressed her palm to the plastic, as if the house itself might remember warmth. Outside, the hallway hummed with normal life. Someone carrying groceries, someone laughing into a phone, the elevator dinging at every floor. Leah locked the door behind her and left the key on the mantel. Grief rearranges rooms, but it also rearranges stories. The cameras had been weapons disguised as guardians, and the guardians had failed. Still, the room had kept a witness. The quiet physics of light on glass, the kettle's tiny metronome, the log that remembered to tap, even after a clip died. Ava believed she could turn off seeing. She had only turned off mercy. Prison isn't silence. It's a hive that never sleeps. Keys clanging, footsteps echoing, coughs through concrete, voices bouncing from steel to steel. Ava Monroe thrived in the noise. Guards noted how quickly she adapted, how she manipulated even inside, trading favors for phone minutes, memorizing schedules, making herself indispensable to other inmates by fixing contraband phones and reprogramming televisions. If control was oxygen, Ava had found a new supply. Journalists clamored for interviews. Ava said yes to most, her words slipping into documentaries, podcasts, YouTube explainers. Each time, she reframed the narrative. Ethan was weak, she'd declare. I was strong. Strength scares people. Sometimes she cast herself as victim. He begged me to love him more than I could bear. The contradictions didn't matter. The camera loved her, and she loved it back. In a way, she hadn't lost her audience, only exchanged Ethan's apartment cameras for millions of glowing screens. Detective Ellison watched from afar, both weary and wary. She's constructing mythology, she told Leah. If you repeat a story enough times, people forget to check the evidence. Leah scrolled through comment sections under Ava's interviews, half horrified, half infatuated. She's beautiful. She's misunderstood. If she loved me like that, I wouldn't complain. Leah wanted to reply, to scream through the keyboard, but Ellison advised restraint. Obsession thrives on oxygen. Don't feed it. Still, one night, Leah broke. She uploaded a single voicemail Ethan had left her. His voice cracked through static. I'm okay, sis. Just, sometimes I feel like she's watching me, even when she's not here. The clip went viral. Tagged hashtag Eyes Never Blink. It shifted the tide, reminding people the story wasn't glamorous, it was suffocating. Behind prison walls, Ava learned of the hashtag. Instead of shrinking, she smiled. He's still talking, she told her cellmate. Even in death, he keeps me alive. She wrote letters to Ethan, dozens of them, though he would never read them. Each began with my forever, and ended with yours until the cameras sleep. Guards intercepted most, but some leaked online, fueling fascination and disgust. Meanwhile, Ellison dug deeper, not for trial but for closure. She requested Ava's digital archives, combing through years of cloud backups. Buried in folders labeled vacations, shopping, and recipes were hundreds of unsent recordings. Ava speaking directly into her phone camera late at night. Sometimes she whispered confessions. Sometimes she ranted at shadows. One file chilled Ellison most. Timestamp. A week before Ethan's death. Ava leaned close, eyes wide, whispering, he doesn't know I already practiced. Pillows first. I wanted to get the timing right. The file wasn't evidence for trial, too late for that. But Ellison played it for Leah in a quiet office. Leah wept, not only for Ethan, but for the confirmation that his end was rehearsed, staged like theater. She treated his life like a rehearsal. Leah said bitterly, and his death like opening night. The prison psychiatrist noted Ava's lack of remorse, diagnosing traits consistent with narcissistic and obsessive-compulsive patterns. But Ava dismissed the labels. I don't fit in your textbooks, she told him. Love isn't clinical. When he asked what love meant to her, she answered, ownership. If you leave, you betray. If you betray, you die. That's balance. Reporters replayed the quote endlessly. Commentators debated whether Ava was insane or simply evil. In truth, she straddled the line, methodical enough to plan, impulsive enough to act, charismatic enough to distort perception. She was both spectacle and lesson. Leah decided to turn her grief into activism. She partnered with domestic violence organizations, speaking about red flags, surveillance framed as safety, isolation disguised as devotion, boundaries erased under the banner of closeness. Each time she stood at a podium, she held Ethan's sketchbook, its torn page still missing. Obsession doesn't look like a knife at first, she would say. It looks like a gift, a camera, a location share, a goodnight text. But gifts can become shackles. Her words resonated. Survivors reached out. Campaigns used Ethan's story to push for stronger digital abuse laws. Some states proposed legislation requiring consent for in-home surveillance shared between partners, with automatic alerts when one user changed settings. Lawyers nicknamed it Ethan's Law. From her cell, Ava smirked at the news. They're still saying his name, she told a journalist. So I win. The reporter, shaken, asked if she regretted anything. Ava leaned forward, smile sharp as glass. Regret is for people who think they lost. I never lose. I keep him. But control without audience is starvation. Prison routine dulled her edges. Letters unanswered. Interviews dwindling. Even guards growing immune to her games. For the first time, silence crept in. And silence, for someone like Ava, was worse than death. She requested more cameras in her block, citing safety. The warden refused. Ava laughed, a sound that echoed down the corridor like a cracked lullaby. Then I'll be my own camera, she muttered, retreating to her bunk with a notebook she filled with drawings of eyes, page after page, until paper ran out. Leah, years later, would still dream of Ethan's apartment, the red recording light glowing in the dark, the sense that someone watched even when alone. But in her dreams, the light eventually flickered out, leaving only quiet. That quiet, she realized, was not emptiness but peace, the one thing Ava could never steal. Years passed. The trial transcripts yellowed, documentaries aged, hashtags faded. New crimes claimed the spotlight. New faces filled the cycle of fascination and outrage. But in Portland, the ghost of Ethan Cole lingered in smaller ways. His sketches still hanging in cafes where he once doodled. Leah's voice still echoing in classrooms and conferences, warning about the dangers of digital control disguised as love. Ava Monroe remained in prison, her 35-year sentence unfolding like a slow bleed of time. She had adapted at first, manipulating, performing. But eventually even notoriety loses its shine. The letters she wrote were returned unopened. The interview requests dwindled to nothing. Inmates grew bored of her dramatics. For someone who thrived on eyes, whether cameras or people, Ava found herself starving in obscurity. But Ava had always been inventive. Guards discovered she had carved small circles into the wall beside her bunk, arranging them into patterns that resembled unblinking eyes. "They watch me while I sleep," she explained with a smile. "I feel safer this way." When they painted over the carvings, she started scratching them into her skin with a paperclip. Tiny red dots lined her forearms, each one an eye. Her psychiatric evaluations grew darker. One doctor wrote, "Patient demonstrates escalating self-created surveillance. She cannot function without the sensation of being watched. This extends obsession beyond others and into herself." Meanwhile, Leah tried to move forward. She married, had children, taught art classes in Ethan's name. She never spoke of Ava at home, choosing instead to frame Ethan as the man he was: gentle, creative, alive in every sketch. Yet sometimes at night, when her son asked for a bedtime story, she hesitated before turning off the baby monitor, remembering how cameras had once betrayed instead of protected. It was during one of those late nights that Detective Ellison called. She was retired by then, voice roughened by years of chasing broken stories. "Leah," she said, "I thought you should know. Ava's gone." Leah sat in silence. The news landed without fireworks, like a door quietly clicking shut. Ava had been found in her cell, lifeless, surrounded by dozens of notebook pages taped to the walls. Each page held the same drawing, a single, staring eye. No words, no confession, just repetition. Cause of death: suicide. Leah expected relief. Instead, she felt hollow. "Did she leave anything?" she asked. "A note," Ellison replied. One line: "Even eyes close eventually." For days, Leah carried the note in her mind, chewing on its meaning. Ava, who lived for surveillance, had finally admitted what she could never bear: that even endless watching ends. But Leah refused to let the note define Ethan's story. She placed it in a drawer, unopened again, and returned to her students. In the years that followed, Ethan's law passed in multiple states, mandating transparency and consent in shared surveillance devices. Advocacy groups cited Ethan's case as a turning point in recognizing digital control as abuse. Leah stood at the signing ceremony, sketchbook in her hands, speaking softly. "He didn't die for nothing." His silence became our voice. The cameras in Ethan's old apartment were long removed, the walls repainted, new tenants moving in unaware of what had unfolded. But light still traveled the same paths, bouncing off glass, whispering truths to anyone patient enough to notice. In some sense, the apartment had learned to heal. In another, it would always remember. Ava Monroe's story faded from headlines, relegated to dusty corners of true crime forums. Yet Ethan's name endured, not as victim alone, but as the reason people questioned what love looks like when it turns into ownership. And so the final image remained not Ava's unblinking eyes, but Ethan's sketches, hands open, palms lifted, as if saying, "This is what freedom looks like."